We started, man. So the way forward. Welcome, one and all of those people watching out there. My name is Akim-Maria Ella. UD.
And this is J off here,
Yeah,
aka
Jay
UD.
up here. So
J as in initial, not JAY.
it's true. Jay, as in the J, like Dr.
Yeah, as in
J.
the J.
Dr. J was it just one J, or did he have an AY like Jay Z at the end of it?
Who's Dr. J?
Dr. J was a basketball player, I think in the 70s. That was like
Okay, yeah.
they used to. I think he had a nickname like Stretch, and he had like an afro. Like this is
Mm,
my recollection of the guy. Anyway, I used to play like with like some really high knee socks, kind of like Kevin Durant of the
o-
ages. But obviously, this is basketball.
okay,
Basketball of
okay.
its
Kind of
nation.
like the quintessential sort of 70s
Yeah,
Afro-American basketballer sort of look.
yeah. I think it's actually based on him. He did the half. He did the free throw jump before Michael Jordan, but Mike kind of like jazzed it up a bit. And you know that Jordan
What's
logo
it?
now.
What's
So
a
the
free
free throw
throw
in
jump?
basketball is like where I don't know if you've ever heard of the key in basketball. There's a paint.
No,
When you're in the paint, there's a
I don't. I
like a
don't run in the
keyhole shape.
basketball circles.
It's all good. There's a keyhole shaped uh demarcation on the court where
Oh,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know
when you
that
go a
now. I know
circle.
where you
Yeah.
take the free throws from.
Yes. So Dr. J back in the 70s, he ran and he jumped from that spot to dunk. Yeah, and then Michael Jordan did the same thing as well. But Michael Jordan, that's the classic Air Jordan logo. That's where Michael
Yeah.
Jordan got that like leg split from now.
Okay.
That's from his
Interesting.
free throw
Interesting.
jump. So these marketers in the US, man, they know how to like mix up things so that you get all those
Of
iconic
course, man.
moments
Of
for the
course.
legendary icon that is Michael Jordan, who probably
Of
is the
course.
greatest
The
basketball
US,
player to ever live. Pardon?
arguably. Yeah.
Mm,
But the US is all about consumerism and just selling things.
yeah, yeah.
Like the
Which is not
US
bad.
is like, yeah, well, I guess it has its positives and negatives, but
Hmm.
there's nowhere else on the planet that I've been to that
Yeah.
you like TV advertisements are more monetized. So
Mm,
the example is if you go from Africa to Europe to America, right?
hmm.
So watching TV or even watching content on YouTube,
Yeah.
where in Africa you have way less advertisements on
Hmm.
TV and on YouTube, right? You go to
Okay, okay.
Europe, it increases slightly, and you go to America and it's on steroids, right?
I
America
agree.
is like like Super Bowl commercial slots are like the most expensive in the world, I think.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I've heard of
maybe
those.
apart from like the World Cup, but even maybe more so than the World Cup, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, America is all about selling you stuff, and most people there buy a lot of things that they don't actually need.
Mm. That's interesting. So consumerism, which is obviously kind of what we're getting together to discuss on the way forward, which is our inaugural. This is our inaugural meeting for the way forward, a podcast hoping to discuss things from a wide variety. One of the things you said before we started recording was that we should sort of keep it open in terms of what we call it. But it's important to highlight that because obviously our discussions can range from, you know, peanuts growing in the Nigerian southern region to the election of a dictator in a different country, wherever that country may be. So, like,
Of course,
that's all interesting. All with the human curiosity, the natural human curiosity that we have, so that we can arrive at a reasonable conclusion, which would not only
yeah,
entertain but also inform people in which direction,
yeah,
yeah, to head in. So that's our objective. That's our aim. Of course, this is the inaugural, the pilot meeting.
the
So
pilot. I was about to say.
so
Yeah,
this is
so I guess to add to what you're saying is
yeah.
like offer our own unique perspective and sort of to guide. Well, I guess me and you were both millennials, right? So we'll offer
Yeah.
our own perspective, our own
Hmm.
very unique perspective, because we grew up in a very I say crazy time, and we experienced a bit of the old ways, and we're
Mhm.
still watching how things are sort of changing and developing very quickly in front of our eyes.
Too
You know,
right, too right. Yeah.
so we have a unique perspective, and we have a good story to tell.
Hmm.
Even if I mean, definitely, or rather, obviously, age-wise, experience-wise, we may not have as much, but we still have a lot to offer to people older and younger than us.
Agreed. Agreed. Speaking of what we have to offer and where we're coming from being millennials, of course, I think it's a good time to like inform our audience of the background, like how we got to where we are, who we are essentially, and
Yeah.
with that direction, why do we feel that that's a necessary thing going forward? Let's start off with like who we are. So, Jay, Jay Ophia, let's go.
Yeah,
Who is
okay,
he?
yeah. Okay, so the reason for that name, first of all, for this is that I want the emphasis to be on my last name rather than my first name. Kind of
Got
like
it.
J. Edgar Hoover, right?
Mm,
He
mm,
has his he has his middle name as the sort of emphasis, right? His first name is just initial. Anyway,
mm.
so background, me and you we met like I don't know how many years it is ago, like 18,
1996.
18 years,
I think it's a bit more
96.
than
So
that, though.
that's 28 years ago.
Yeah. Which is
29 years ago, 29. So we've known each other like longer than most people. A lot of people have been alive. Anyway,
unbelievable.
um, where I guess I'm the product of two middle class Nigerians, born in the mid 80s. I'd say relatively schooled well. Became a professional sailor at the age of 26, 25, qualified fully, and since then I've basically traveled the world non-stop
Mhm.
up until now. Um, I've been to many numerous countries, experienced different cultures, have I have friends from all over the world. I've had relationships from different parts of the globe as well. Um, and generally, my year goes like half the year traveling and half the year, uh, actually more than half the year traveling, say three-quarters of the year traveling, sometimes even more, and then the rest spent in Nigeria. So I would say I have a very good perspective, a unique sort of perspective on um, the human experience in general,
Mhm.
just life. I've been to Europe, I've been to Asia, I've been to North and South America, I've been to the Caribbeans, I've been to several parts in Africa. So yeah, I have a unique perspective and
Well
also
traveled,
sort of
unique perspective.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I have a sort of like a helicopter sort of view on developments, in all these areas. One thing I've noticed that I have over like my fellow Nigerians is because I leave the country so frequently and I go to many different places, I can also tell, the speed at which people change and how developments are being made and who and where is being left behind.
Mm,
So, yes, in a nutshell, that's me. Education wise, I'm educated up to, I guess, bachelor's level.
mm,
But professionally, I keep upgrading my knowledge generally. Um, I try to learn every day, and I try to impart knowledge in whoever I meet. So yeah, I guess for now that's a good description.
for sure, man.
To
For
a certain
sure.
extent, more will come up later on, I guess.
For sure. I just noticed that I've got a filter on. I'm going to take it off for the next interview. I didn't even realize. Like I've got the background, but
I
then
noticed you had
I
a
think I've got a
different one
filter.
when we tried to. You had a
Pardon?
different one when we tried to make the call. You had a different one actually when we tried to make the call the first time,
But
and when you
that was a different application we were working with. So that
Oh,
background
that's
wasn't
true.
there. Yeah.
Okay, that's true. That's true. And I
So this
thought
one was
initially I thought that was just the background in your house,
okay.
but when it changed, I was like, okay, that's
Yeah. I'll take this filter off for the next one. Uh,
all right.
dude, man, that's of course an incredible life story, man. And I think of course the wide ranging helicopter perspective, which you described, is valuable for this podcast, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to like start this with you, because the kind of conversations that we have, like on just regular calls and things along those lines, it's geared towards trying to understand us as Nigerians, but also where to take Nigeria and understand the other aspect of why people in Nigeria are doing what they're doing. One of the significant
Yes.
conversations that we had was that um, we came to the conclusion that in Nigeria it is actually better to conceal what your motives are and what your agenda is, and join the crowd so that you don't get pulled down or anything along those lines, or censored as the term gets used these days, but censored in a more final way where people are not necessarily just muting your voice but ending other aspects of survival. Um, is there anything else you want to add to that aspect?
Yes.
Yourself.
So, I mean, growing growing up or knowing like how life is in Nigeria, that is a very huge part. And from my experience, it's also prevalent in many other places. And I would say the reason for its prevalence in anywhere that it is sort of like a competition for available resources.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever resources are scarce, people will sort of fight over it and compete with themselves, and that competition can usually entail, underhanded tactics, um, just competition is. I don't know if I can liken it to a particular experience, but I don't want to like go too deep or go off also, on a tangent. But the summary is that when you live in a society where resources are scarce, you find out that the limited ones will be people will like fight over them and prevent other people. It prevent proper development and use of those resources, which is sort of making it worse for
Hmm.
everybody, including themselves, when they finally take control of those resources. If that makes any sense, but if it doesn't, definitely we'll expand on it
Yes.
later on.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. That's what we're doing here. Just to add to that point of scarcity and resources, that's what economics essentially deals with. And we were taught that in secondary school, and I'll go into a bit of my background as well, how we're getting to this point. But it's well, one of the main issues we're going to be dealing with is governance, like how people organize themselves, not necessarily Nigerian government or American government or European government, but how people organize themselves and what's the best way to organize themselves. The result of what we're seeing in Nigeria, as you mentioned, the scarcity of resources, determined by those in power. Now, the mental motivation of those in power is to deny their brothers and sisters, thus denying all other aspect of development, which is innovation, growth. Um,
exactly. I was
in
about to say, if
yeah.
I can add to that without sort of throwing you off your, target,
Okay, I'm
right?
here.
Um, they don't understand is that, and I was going on to say that, but obviously we need to
Mhm.
be interactive.
Yeah.
They don't understand that when they do such things, basically, if you allow the resources to be open and free for everyone, or at least for everyone who's interested in developing them or in making use of them, then
Yes.
it just makes things better because it spreads the wealth,
Mm-hmm.
it expands the economy, because once you have more people, it's kind of like coding, for instance.
Yeah.
One of the reasons um the computer and IT sort of industry has been able to expand so quickly is because of how free and open they've made things.
Yes.
It's like with coding, for instance, if you're ever going to code applications, a lot of what you're going to write has already been
Mhm.
written by other people,
Yeah. Yeah.
like open source. So you're just going to pick. from different people. And when you
Yeah.
make whatever you're going to make, most likely you would also make it open source. You make a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the things you will make open source so that other people
Agreed.
can also benefit and use from it. You
Yeah.
know, even language in itself, like the English language, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the reason it is so powerful and it is so useful is the fact that it has borrowed from many other languages.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's yes, it is utilized by many people,
Mm-hmm.
which is the main point actually. The utility when more people use a certain resource,
Mm-hmm.
they they tend to develop it, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they tend to put their own. Everybody has some sort of input, so
Mm-hmm.
they use the language, but the language also benefits from the widespread use.
Yeah. In
So
terms of
any
development.
resource in terms of development, yes.
Yeah.
So any resource that is being used widely would also in itself be developed. And that development will make it um, useful in such a way that it now develops other people and
Yes.
other aspects of people's lives. So relating that to resource use and resource management, it still works in that same way,
It
you know?
does. It does. It does. And one of the things is the question that will come with all this development is how do you make money? This is what I can guess 90 out of 100 people are asking. How do you make money? Rather than looking at the more expansionary development, um, enhancement of other people's lives aspect of it, which is valid. You can ask, how do you make money? However, the how do you make money aspect is not the priority when it comes to development. Development is the priority. You know what I mean? When it
Yes.
comes to that
Yes.
expression, but when you're asking that question, how do you make money, which is fair, is valid, you kind of lose
Uh-huh.
sight of that aspect. And if you have somebody at the top asking that question rather than your finance manager, your finance manager is the one supposed to be asking that question,
Yes.
not the person
Yes.
guiding the
Not the
organization.
person at the top.
Exactly.
Yes. Which
Exactly. So
which okay, that makes so much sense. So you have I see where you're taking the conversation to, which is where
yeah,
that's very it's a very it shows you understand exactly what I'm saying, right?
yeah, yeah.
Even though I know I have a feeling as if I'm not communicating it as best as
Oh,
it should
bro,
be, but
dispel that
you get
completely
exactly.
because here we're gonna solve problems.
So yeah, so
Mhm.
our leadership in Nigeria, and I would assume in much of Africa, always makes that mistake. Rather
Yes,
than understanding that, the more hands given like opportunities to input their own unique perspective and unique attributes into the resources, right?
yes.
Rather than doing that, they see it on a lower level.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
leadership is supposed to be something that transcends most things. You're supposed to be the visionary. You're
exactly.
supposed to see the future. You're supposed to see where everything
Trans-
is going.
to
But
add
when
to
you
what you're
now
saying,
start
transcends
thinking,
reality. You're transcending reality to
yes,
bring the future to the reality that we all
yes,
exist in. Yeah, you're right.
exactly, exactly. Like all these countries, um, the UAE, for instance, their leaders, they could see they were looking at, they weren't even looking at today.
Hmm.
If you go to the UAE, like 50 years ago, the
Yeah.
leader's vision went beyond today. Can you imagine what that is? And today we're seeing UAE, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai, what they're, but even the vision of that guy from back
Hmm.
then has still not been met. So
Exactly.
even today, we're seeing the fruits of it, of like what this man thought up. And
Hmm.
he was living in like tents in the desert. And,
Yeah.
I mean, like, he was a desert man.
It
I mean,
was. I mean, to be fair, he might have had some people to support his vision, like because we know how communities and society works. So, to be fair to those people that were there, but they don't get the credit because of how the governance structure, which is what we're talking about, is set up. Um,
yeah,
the
but he made
guy,
it happen.
the visionary is required for direction. And you're
Yes,
right.
yes.
You're right. Nigeria,
Yeah,
the
so
process.
I'm just building on what you said, right?
Mm.
So most of our leaders in Africa, right? They are like they're not thinking 50 years, 100 years, 200 years into the future, 250 years into the future. They're just thinking about tomorrow. I don't think they're
Mm.
even thinking about tomorrow. They're thinking about now, right now, today. And that's not true leadership.
Yes,
That is not
yes.
that
One
is
of the
not even
things,
leadership.
one of the things I want us to dispel on this podcast, if we can, if we're allowed to call it that. Of course, I believe it is, but if we're allowed to call it a podcast, I want us to dispel the idea that what we have in charge of us in Nigeria is leadership, because it's not. I think it's an insult to those people that have actually led with everybody in
It's an
mind.
insult to the word leadership,
It's
even.
an insult to the word leadership. Yes, it is. I mean, fair enough. Let's call them politicians. Let's call them um, governors and whatever the case may be. However, that idea of leadership, they are leading a group of people, but it's not the majority of the people that they're leading. They're leading the set of people, and this is no like insult to them. Perhaps
Yeah,
maybe
they're
like,
leading their own cronies and
yeah,
fellow criminals to like hold the country to ransom.
it's possible. I mean, innocent until proven guilty, but we know how Nigeria works. And the thing is, to be fair, when you, like they're suffering from the same thing we've just pretty much discussed. They're looking at how they can satisfy their immediate group without actually going beyond today, going beyond the superficial idea, looking deeper. You know, I was telling you that recently, I've been looking at this philosophy classics book, and you know, it's Western philosophy mainly because this is where a lot of philosophy has developed. In their philosophy is regarded highly. You know, obviously there's Eastern philosophy with the Chinese, Confucius, and so on. But
Yeah, just modern philosophy, I
modern
guess.
philosophy. So what I was reading was how Plato wanted to structure his society, and he recommended that philosopher kings. This is the point I'm trying to make. Kings have to be philosophers because they have to constantly keep thinking, and by doing that, they're fulfilling their purpose as human beings because they're thinking about perfection all the time, you know, because
Mhm,
nothing that you bring into reality is ever going to be perfection. It's just going to be part of the form. So if
mhm.
somebody has to think deeply, whereas some of the people that we call leaders in Nigeria, what they're experiencing, they want to partake in the benefits. They're not giving it up to the people that they're supporting. They want to partake, in fact, benefit more than everybody else from it.
Yeah,
And this is a problem.
that's definitely their goal.
Yes, this is a problem. Because as a leader,
It's
you
a
have to
huge problem.
sacrifice. You're
It's a
sacrificing for the
huge problem.
greater good. Pardon?
And I was just talking to, I was that's the main problem. There's as a leader, you're meant to apart from just sacrifice, you're meant to lead by example. So you're meant to do the
Exactly.
hard things to show people
Hmm.
that look, this is what's necessary to move us forward as a people.
Hmm.
But
Agreed.
these people are not even on that sort of in that mind space.
Mm.
They're just there. Their purpose is not even their purpose has been corrupted,
Yes.
and
Sadly,
not just by them,
sadly,
by the system, you
sadly,
know,
sadly.
by
The
the
thing is,
system.
I do believe they're capable of it. I do believe they're capable of that leadership that we hope them to achieve. However, because the first thing you need to do to try and achieve that is to want to achieve that, and you have to make that decision to be that kind of leader. That's what they're lacking, the decision. They haven't made that decision to be that kind of leader. I do believe they're capable of it, but at the moment they're not showing that aspect of it. Just to talk about my background, because we want to keep it like in a bit of a like frame, and this is like the pilot. I think where I would have to start is just being born into like a religious family. Like my family was quite religious. I don't know if most people now within my family to say whether they are like religious, but the level of Catholicism within my family was pretty high. Like there was no Christian holiday that we didn't really acknowledge. You know, it, there
Uh,
was going to the church service every Sunday. My mom didn't necessarily. She's not Catholic, but she was taking us to other churches. I would relate um, her type of Christianity to Baptist Christianity, to baptism. But my dad was Catholic. My grandmother's Catholic, so we go to the church as respect all the protocols or religious rites that actually take place during a service. And so that really shaped my view of the world. Like I really thought Jesus times were here forever and were extended. And everybody I was talking to was like, very Jesus focused. Now I don't know whether I was being psyoped back at the time, but this was like just generally the focus. And hence why the decision to go to Loyola, the school that we both met at, was quite
Yeah, are
prevalent.
you serious?
Yeah, and so yes, it was, and so that the depth of that Catholicism, because following Loyola, I went to another Jesuit school in the UK, and it was going
Are
through
you
this path.
serious?
Yeah, going through this path with the mindset like, dude, you too, you have to be religious. You too, you have to think about like dying like a saint and stuff like that. That was the level that I was like steeped into,
Yeah,
like this religion. And I still look up to a lot of Catholics as like heroes, Like to be fair, Saint Ignatius, what he did was very profound, and he was influenced by Jesus.
yes,
But then I I had to understand where that conversation. I used to have all those conversations about Jesus when I was growing up, but these conversations were getting less and less. And people I'll be even meeting, like if I say, "Oh no, we have to be like Jesus," they look at me like, "Whoa, this guy is he a religious extremist or something along those lines?" And then I was in London at the time of the bombings and things along those lines. So religion was like really a tense subject in the UK for quite some time. Like people really ran away from conversations about religion. And so I had to understand, so how do I live in this world? I was still in my early 20s. How do I live in this world and just basically stay balanced? I was going through a lot of mental turmoil and understanding. As you know, I lost my sister as well. So these were
yeah,
really events that shaped the kind of character that I am today. And um, I had to like align that with who I wanted to become as well, because survival um, is a it's a natural instinct for all of us in the world. And and that was basically something that I had to do. Like I was thinking, okay, I'm first son in Nigeria. You know how that's looked at as, and we have to essentially build the next generation and protect who we are. Give me 1 second. I'll
of
just
course.
edit this bit. My lighting changed. I apologize. So that really shaped like my thinking, my understanding of like reality. I had to survive. And so the way the UK is, you have a career, there's certain levels, there's certain um opportunity that you're given. You either pass or you fail it, and you move on for the next step. And so this is the attitude I started to adopt. I wanted to just like basically check up all the boxes of a career, go back to Nigeria, did my NYC, but at the same time I wanted to contribute good to the world, and good has been like a top priority for me. As
Yeah,
I was making my way through, I noticed that not everybody's intentions that I was coming across was aligned with mine, like in the sense that this is the good that they want to put forward, and the discipline that you have to get to that level, like just want good all the time, is pretty challenging. Like you have to commit your life to being good, and it's not easy. And this is where
yeah,
I tied it back to my religion, and saw everything that everybody was trying to teach me when I was growing up, and I was like, okay, come on, Akim, try and be a hero. Let's go. So that's the kind of experience that I've been living, and hence how I've got to this point of where I care about the world so much that I want to contribute in a way that I'm going to leave it better than when I arrived. And it touches on all the points that you've mentioned, how things have been changing, Nigerian governments and so much more around the world. But um, I I think for me as an individual, the place for me to logically start is Nigeria. If I can't improve the situation in Nigeria, I cannot hope to improve anywhere else in the world, because nobody's going to give me a chance to even help them or even to talk to them about improvement in their space when things are
yeah,
going crazily back in Nigeria. But it also
yeah.
gives me an opportunity to explain.
Charity begins at home.
Exactly. It also gives me an opportunity to explain why that is a struggle. We've talked about some of the things so far, corruption and so on and so forth. Okay, that raises the question: am I a corrupt person as well, having been born in Nigeria? And strictly answering that, to a degree, I would say no. I don't know what corruption is entirely. Would I take money from people where it's supposed to go? I wouldn't. If I'm in a position of authority, I wouldn't take that. I still wouldn't take it even if I'm not, because there's integrity. I'm doing my accounting qualifications, and I have to have that level of integrity which I'm committing to. I think those principles keep me good and grounded on towards my goal of being good ultimately. So I'm not even entirely sure what corruption is, but I know what I would definitely not do. The people say the system is corrupt. One of the definitions I think corruption does fit for me is if the situation is flawed. If you have a system, the system is not producing what is meant to be producing, then there's something corrupt about that system. That's how I use corruption. Not that
Yeah,
I want to make
that's valid.
something worse. Yeah, there's a system in
That's
place, it's
valid.
not working. And if
Yeah.
it's not having that output, and it's as a result of my action, I'm corrupting the system. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
as a
yeah. It's kind of like, I guess, like, excuse all the references to computing,
no worries,
right?
let's
It's
bring
kind
it
of
in,
like a
man. That's the
computer
age we're
program.
living in.
Yeah, it's kind of like a computer program. Like, if
Mhm.
it's corrupted, it won't function the way it's supposed to, you
Yes.
know? So I think that's just it,
Hmm.
generally. If you design a system and then you run the system and it doesn't do what it's intended to do,
Yes.
first it will first it has failed, and then
Mhm.
secondly, the cause of the failure is most, probably due to corruption or
Mhm.
misuse, whichever.
Yes. There we
Yeah.
go.
But yeah, you can go on. I mean, did you finish?
I think I did. I think I landed at the point where I wanted to land, which is that
Okay.
where we are right now. We're creating this podcast. The intention is to bring good, to take us forward into the next hour, the next day, the next month, the next year. Just with that, sense of clarity and purpose and direction. It all also known as doing good. To just get
Yes,
to the
and I
point
think,
where, as
yes, I
millennials,
agree.
yeah.
I agree, and I think we'll also be speaking for a lot of our peers, a lot
Yes.
of our compatriots, a lot
Hmm.
of just many different demographics. I think
Yeah.
we will be speaking their voices. Generally, will be
Amen.
their
I
voices
hope we do.
because, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for sure, because of our experiences, right? We will just we'll be saying things that other people want to say,
Hmm.
and some other people would need to hear. You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm conscious. So we're still trying to work out the setup of spaces. I don't know how it's going to be recorded. So it could be that on the recording when I post it, we're not going to be side by side. Although in going forward, it's probably better for us to like have our own individual cameras record it. This is a conversation for off the podcast. But the current setup, we're still working on this project. I imagine that going forward is going to evolve, is going to grow, and with the support of viewers and the audience, we should become something, as you said, as a voice for our peers and compatriots who want to express the same things, may not necessarily know how, but and I hope they don't feel restricted that they can't express these things because at the end of the day, Nigeria is a democracy, and free speech is the basis of democracy. So it's more along the lines of whether they have that capability of saying it because they're allowed to say it in Nigeria from the laws essentially, and that's how we're gonna hopefully operate this podcast and do our best. I think on that note,
That makes sense.
how does it feel like in terms of the amount of content that we put forward and essentially allowing our viewers to digest this?
Uh, I think it's just a start, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're going to edit this, right, when you finish, or what are you
I'm
going to do
thinking
with
maybe
it?
I'm gonna give it to them raw, give it to the whole audience.
Mm, Let's see. Anyway, you will watch it right after you finish
Yeah.
to see what. Yeah.
What
So,
needs to come out?
I mean, this is just a start. Pilots are never really what the show, um, or rather, the show never stagnant at the pilot. It always develops way
Yeah.
further, and towards the end,
Hmm.
or after even the first season, it's already very radically different from the pilot. So
Very true.
we'll definitely develop and add some more meat and vegetables to this.
Feel healthy, right?
This dish.
Nice one,
We'll
man.
make it a balanced diet.
Balanced diet. That's what's up. That's
Yeah.
what's up. All good.
It was good, man.
Let me end the.
What?
I'll end the recording, and then.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me just. We have an exit space. So thank you for watching the forward. Um, hopefully you join us next time. This is a goodbye from me, Jay.
Yeah. From Jay, just guys, compatriots, people out there, just listen to what we've said. Um, like and make your comments, whatever like contributions you have, whatever you agree with, you disagree with, just let us know. Put it in the comments.
For sure.
And hopefully you'll be hearing more and seeing more of us. Thank you very much, guys.
Let's go. The way forward. Sensational.
All the way forward, man.